I am now happy to announce that there will be no income tax payable up to income of 12 lakh rupees. I propose to 1. Remove 7 tariff rates. This is over and above the 7 tariff rates removed in 23-24 budget. The revised estimate of the fiscal deficit is 4.8% of the GDP.
ये बजट एक फोर्स मल्टीप्लायर है। ये बजट सेविंग्स को बढ़ाएगा, इन्वेस्टमेंट को बढ़ाएगा, कंजम्पशन को बढ़ाएगा और ग्रोथ को भी तेजी से बढ़ाएगा।
ये भारत सरकार का बजट है कि बिहार सरकार का बजट है? आपने बिहार के अलावा किसी और प्रदेश का नाम सुना वित्त मंत्री जी के पूरे बजट भाषण में?
The infrastructure is not going for the rest of the country. It's only going towards Bihar because we all know that this year is the Bihar election. So basically, for essence, and Maharashtra has been ignored, and Tamil Nadu, there's not a single word for Tamil Nadu or for any other southern states.
Sweetness for the middle class, a firm hold on fiscal consolidation and continuity on capex. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's 8th consecutive budget aims to give a fillip to consumption by putting money in the hands of the middle class. Also, as they say, no news is good news for the markets. A status quo is maintained on capital gains tax as was expected. The big headline change is, of course, in the income tax slabs. The government will forego 1 lakh crore rupees in direct tax revenue this year on account of the cut in personal income tax. That really is the big headline that sums up the mood of Budget 2025. To take the discussion forward, we're joined by KV Subramanian, India's Executive Director at the IMF, also India's former Chief Economic Advisor, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, Executive Chairperson and founder of Biocon and Biocon Biologics, Christian D. Guzman, Senior Vice President and India Sovereign Analyst at Moody's Ratings, Vinayak Chatterjee, Chairman of the CII Mission on Infrastructure, FICCI President Vardhan Agarwal, Vishesh Chandiok, CEO of Grant Thornton, with us as well. Gentlemen, Kiran, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. KV Subramanian, let me come to you first because you've been tweeting up a storm on the multiplier impact of the personal income tax cut and the benefits it could accrue to growth. You know, I have to say that I took some of your numbers and put them to the finance ministry budget makers. They were a bit more conservative in their own estimates on what the implication could be, what the impact can be. KV Subramanian, over to you.
Shereen, you would remember around this time I was in the studios and I had mentioned, and you'll remember very well, that the fiscal deficit will come out to be less than budgeted, which is exactly what has happened. You know, having been there in the ministry, we've had this principle of under-promising and over-delivering that has started, with the, very transparently presenting the budget numbers. If you recall, earlier, there used to be these off-balance sheet items that used to be presented during my tenure that was removed, and we're presenting transparently. I think that same principle applies here. I think as I'm sure you would have actually seen the tweet, I have done the numbers. I've been conservative there, because the actual savings rate for the middle class, recent data, 2023 data is 18%, and I've actually instead used 20%, which gives me a lower multiplier. If this 1 lakh crore number, I think, which has been announced by the finance minister as the foregone revenue is correct, and I think there is reason to be correct. Actually, as I said, the finance ministry tends to now under-promise and over-deliver. Then I think the impact on consumption would be about 4.8% of GDP, and overall GDP itself 2.7% additional.
2.7% additional on GDP. As I said, I put those numbers to the finance ministry, and of course, they didn't bite the bait on that. That's as far as consumption is concerned. Let me come to Vinayak Chatterjee, the bucket man. CNBC TV 18 is trending today, but as is Vinayak Chatterjee because of a tweet that is viral, Vinayak. And your quibble on capex. I put that to the government, and their response was, look, you've got to look at it at an aggregate basis of what we're doing between the center and the states. If you do that, we're up 17%.
No, that's not correct. I think let me step back and talk about a serious issue that has emanated from the infrastructure maths of this budget. For almost a decade now, and actually from the beginning of this government, there has been a very stated, well-articulated, well-implemented policy that it is public outlays on infrastructure that will be the pump primer for economic growth. And on this basis, year after year after year, we have seen 30% growth in infrastructure allocations. 5 to 7.5, 7.5 to 10. Last year was a bit of a shocker with 10%. But this time to see that there is a near zero increase in allocation then brings to question that is there a reset of economic thinking? The question is, which I pose to you, which I pose to your viewers, and I have posed to the government and analysts, is that if infrastructure is no more the pump primer of the economy, what is it then? And is this a reset of national economic planning strategy?
I asked the finance secretary just before you arrived exactly that question.
What was his answer?
We are not abandoning capex. Look at it as an aggregate between what we're doing at the central level as well as what we're doing with states.
So the thumb rule is very simple, and you can check the maths which I have shared with you every year. If the center does 10, then a matching 10 is done by 3 constituents together, which is states plus private sector plus what is called EBR, extra budgetary resources. Yeah. These 3 things together do another 10. So you get 10 plus 10, 20, right? So if you do 0, it is then, and they're not going to do 10. So it's not logic that holds. The fact is that the central spend on infrastructure is the market driver for all the states as well as private sector as EBR. It is a market maker. And therefore, this is a very serious question when you stand back and look at the big economic picture, forget all the little announcements.
Yeah.
Is this a reset of economic strategy for the nation?
Okay. KV Subramanian, would you agree with Vinayak's strategy that that's the signal that the government is sending out? And I go back again. You were here with me in the studio last year. The then Finance Secretary, Mr. Somanathan, had also stated that, look, we are perhaps reaching our limit as far as what the government can do on capex is concerned. How would you read the capex allocation?
Is raising is something that absolutely needs to be responded to. If you look at the budget allocation and, the actual numbers, for instance, that was achieved, the budget allocation was 11.1 lakh crore and the actual amount was 10.18. So there seems to be, and, while part of it could be attributed, let's say, to the election, the first quarter elections, but I think, and I'm not part of the government now, so I don't know the true reason, and maybe Vinayak can throw light on this. Maybe there are some capacity constraints that are actually being hit in the infrastructure ministries being able to spend this. And I think it is important, therefore, to be able to sort of provide numbers that can be really achieved. What you don't want is, a significant increase in the budgeted amount, but not actually being implemented. So that's an aspect. I think, overall, actually, I would say that the focus on infrastructure must continue. I think the complementary aspect, therefore, is to examine the capacity in the infrastructure ministries. If there are some constraints in then being able to spend the amounts, I think those need to be removed so that we can renew again and increase the budget allocation. That said, though, let me add, actually, I think I don't mind, even from an economic strategy perspective, actually the focus on consumption, because one of the engines that actually had not been firing as well has been it's been private investment. And investors, basically industry, kept saying that, it's the consumption is not increasing, and that is why we're not investing. Now I think industry should have absolutely no excuses whatsoever to actually say that we're not investing. I hope they don't come back and say, we're waiting for the monetary policy to change. Actually, I think the spur in consumption, increase in consumption, as I actually have tweeted, I think should definitely be a spur. And you do remember that when we talk about the virtuous cycle, right? Consumption consumption is an important element. Yes, it is private investment that is the first trigger, or overall investment that is a trigger. But I think working on another macro variable, consumption, is something that will help. So I don't see this as a change in fiscal policy or overall economic strategy, but just sort of tailoring to having the ears on the ground and responding to something that is required at this point.
Okay, let me get Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw into the conversation as well. Kiran, what's the big takeaway? What do you believe Budget 2025 is likely to do for growth, but more importantly, also for inclusive growth?
So, Shereen, this is a very interesting panel discussion that we're having. I think the government is definitely focused on a couple of areas, consumption being the prime, and then followed by investment, innovation and employment. And I think in terms of innovation, which has always been my pet fetish, I think I would like to see more details on the 20,000 crores outlay that they have announced for private sector innovation. My worry is that, we need to have deployment of these kind of, allocations, because innovation is going to be the way to go for India, because I think moving from volume to value is very important for India. And innovation in many sectors is going to be key. I'm glad that the government has come up with a mission mode for AI, quantum, and I'd like it to extend to other areas like synthetic biology and other areas of the biotech sector. I'd like to see the fine print there. But in terms of inclusive, growth, I think the government has done a lot, at least in healthcare. Trying to get rural healthcare beefed up, trying to provide access and affordable access to life-saving medicines. Though there, I don't quite see how just customs duty exemption is going to do that. I think it has to be translation into GST as well. So that's what I really would like to see from this budget. So overall, it's a good budget, but I think we also need to see it in context with the geopolitics and geoeconomics of our time.
And that's what I was. You've preempted my question, Kiran, because I was going to ask you just that. We've got the Trump tariff threat, and pharmaceuticals is a sector that he has identified as a sector that he intends to go after from a tariff point of view. What should we prepare ourselves for? How concerned are you with that threat?
So, of course, he gave the pharma threat more to, Canada more than India. And I think India needs to position itself as a partner and a strategic partner that provides health security to the US. So I think levying a tariff on pharmaceuticals from India is not going to really benefit the US. So I think we need to play it very carefully.
Yes, we will need to play it carefully, of course, when we do finally see the details coming in from the Trump administration. But Christian, let me come to you with what you have made of the budget numbers, with the fiscal consolidation target, as well as the glide path and the move towards debt.
Well, thanks for having me. I think in general, what we can say that there are some positive things and there are perhaps some not so positive things. On the positive side, I think the commitment to ongoing fiscal consolidation, as represented by the revised estimates for 24-25, as well as the expected outcome for 25-26, that's really supportive of, I would say, policy credibility. Now, I think perhaps what's not so positive is I think there are still some questions about the support to the economy coming from the announced tax measures. I think in particular, the revenue buoyancy that is sort of coming out from the government's projections is a bit, the outlook here is a bit uncertain. I guess the way we see it is that when in US dollar terms, people who make less than about $14,000 a year, that's sort of 12 lakh income per year, are going to be exempted. But GDP per capita is $3,000. So what you're seeing here perhaps is a very large and significant erosion of the revenue base. But yet against this prospective erosion of the revenue base, the government is still projecting very large increases, very healthy increases in tax revenue, notwithstanding the estimates for foregone revenue. So I do think that there is some downside risk here to achieving that 4.4% of GDP target. But the signaling here, I would say, is quite positive.
Signaling quite positive. Vishesh Chandiok also with us here in the studio. Vishesh, many thanks for joining us. On balance, what does Budget 2025 deliver on?
I think it delivers on exactly what the economic survey talked about. And if you look at the preface to the economic survey, it talked about growth through deregulation.
Yeah.
It was just terrific to see the words being used there. How can we get out of the way of business? How can we give business back their time and mental bandwidth? How can we move away from this guilty until proven innocent? And I think the budget delivered that simplicity, predictability in so many areas. Of course, more to be seen with the income tax bill coming, but she gave us some preview today. She said it'll be half the size of the current act. The finance minister also said that we need to move towards justice versus punishment and thinking. And then if you look at specific areas, I think the private equity community, both category 1, category 2 funds, were asking for that clarity. Is the income business income or capital gains? I think that's being clarified as capital gains. The question remains, is the carry for partners within those funds also capital gains? That'll be a real bonanza, but we'll see. So many other areas, the 4-year ability to look back on revised returns, the 3-year safe harbor on transfer pricing. So many such areas where there is more predictability, that recognition, perhaps even taking a leaf out of what we're seeing in America. How do we really get out of the way of business and deregulate to power business to deliver growth?
Yes, and that exercise will take a year once that commission is set up and gets down to work. But Christian, I want to come back to you with the growth expectation. 10.1 nominal growth, that is what the budget is working with at this point in time. And my conversation with the budget makers, the economic survey projection is between 6.3 to 6.8. Post the budget, they do believe that they're probably going to be able to deliver on the upper end.
I think we would sort of agree with that assessment. We're not going to make any material changes to our real GDP growth forecast of 6.6% for the upcoming fiscal year. We do think, in essence, that we had seen a trough in growth a couple of quarters ago, and that there will be a rebound in growth up to an average of 6.6% for the next fiscal year, based on things like support from the government budget, as well as some normalization in terms of the liquidity issues that are in the banking system, as well as perhaps some support from monetary policy. So I think we would broadly agree with those growth assumptions.
Broadly agree with the growth assumptions. Kiran, I want to come back to you with one of the announcements and the stated objectives of the budget. Heal in India and the medical tourism opportunity. Also very specific mention, and I know that this is something that probably caught your eye on cancer hospitals. The government making that very clear as part of its healthcare plan, and a good one at that. So overall, this Heal in India opportunity and the fact that the government has decided to focus on it.
Yeah, so I think, medical tourism is something which India should be focused on and is very good at delivering on. But I think, as I said, we need to see the kind of details as to how is the government going to bolster this medical tourism aspect. Secondly, as far as the cancer, the focus on cancer drugs is concerned, whilst they have reduced the basic customs duty or exempted the basic customs duty on cancer drugs, is it really going to benefit patients in the way it should? Because I really think that I would like to see an exemption from GST for cancer patients to make a real difference. So, whilst it's a step in the right direction, it's not enough.
Okay, Harshvardhan Agarwal here with us as well. Does this now finally get the private sector, as Krishnamurthy Subramanian was pointing out, to do more in terms of setting up new capacities? Also, the demand boost that was hoped for, do you believe that the budget will now deliver on that?
Certainly, Shereen, I think, once the extra money comes in the hand of the consumers, obviously they are going to spend, and which is going to boost the consumption. And what I believe, once the consumption increases, the thing of private investment, that should also get a boost, and ultimately also giving a boost to employment. And once it gives a boost to employment, so again, more consumption. So it's a whole circle, which I see, and that is why I am very excited about this step of the no tax till 12 lakh, and in the hand of the consumers, 1 lakh crore rupees is going to come, which is a very, very big amount. And overall, I see a lot of impact of this on the economy.
Yes, that is the hope and the expectation. Christian, a quick word in on CapEx and, whether you have any concerns on the allocation as far as CapEx is concerned before I get closing comments here from my guests.
Now, I hear that, yes, there is indeed perhaps 0% increase with regards to last year's budget allocation versus this year. But I think the important thing to note is perhaps if the government were to successfully execute next year's budget allocation for infrastructure, that would be a 10% increase over the estimates for 24-25. That would be a significant increase in growth. But having said that, I think KV Subramanian did point to the issues around capacity, because there was a large degree of underspending in the current fiscal year, in the fiscal year that's ending in March. So those do need to be addressed so that you do get that nice kicker to growth.
Yes, Vinayak, Vishesh Chandiok, final comment from you in terms of the kicker that the budget provides, the headline that you take away.
I think the headline I take away is comprehensive. There's 6 ecosystems we believe at Grant Thornton that are important to shape Viksit Bharat, Vibrant Bharat. Climate, you had that 100 gigawatts of power. Inclusion, you had those 100 poorest, least productive agri-districts. Automation, you had that investment in AI, deep tech. FDI, you had the insurance, 100% on private capital. You had, the AIFs that I talked about, and lastly, regulatory. It's those 6 ecosystems that need to be shaped in order to shape a better India. And I think the budget touched on all of those. Yes,
it certainly did touch on all of those. The final comment to you, Vinayak Chatterjee, you of course heard from the government as well, and you've got your response.
Look, the near zero increase in the infrastructure budget has been attributed to two issues. To move towards fiscal consolidation, get that 4.4%, and because there has been an unspent amount from last year's allocation. The second one is serious, because if as a nation that's trying to pull itself and economic growth and pull people out of poverty, create jobs by spending money that is available, is unable to spend it because of certain constraints at the central and state level, that is a serious issue that we need to discuss in the weeks and months ahead on discussions on your panel. The second point, and I'm going to stop here, is that across the budget speech, there are very strong hints of wanting PPPs to come back again, public-private partnerships. There are 6 very strong, shall we say, interventions mentioned. I won't read them out for you, but to get PPP back will require very hard work by the political and the bureaucratic establishment, something I know that they've just realized, and a starting position would be to once again start reading the Kelkar Committee report on PPP revitalization and start implementing the recommendations. And that report was commissioned by this government alone.
Yes, so and it is there to be operationalized. So the work has already been done. But revitalizing PPP, Triple P India, I remember from many budgets ago, that was the buzzword, and that is what we're hoping.
500 crore allocation for PPP by Arun Jaitley in his 4th July maiden budget.
Yes, I remember that very, very well. But Vinayak Chatterjee, Vishesh Chandiok, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, Christian Guzman, Harshvardhan Agarwal and KV Subramanian, many thanks for joining us here on the CNBC TV 18 Budget Town Hall with your take on Budget 2025. But there's been plenty for startups as well. India startup community here with their budget verdict on the Budget Baatcheet, the Startup Policy Forum in Bengaluru, bringing together startups to decode the budget. My colleague Jude is there. Jude.
Indian startups managed to find favor with Budget 2025 as Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman made a series of announcements aimed at the overall growth of the startup ecosystem.
A deep tech fund of funds will also be explored, now a center of excellence in artificial intelligence for education will be set up with a total outlay of 500 crores.
A fresh infusion of 10,000 crore rupees towards the government's fund of funds for startups was perhaps the biggest takeaway from the union budget, simply because it comes at a time when VC funding has slowed and startups are starting to think outside the box to secure capital.
And I think putting development capital like SIDBI, other sources of capital, fund of funds was needed.
This was expected, and there was a lot of expectation that we're going to see this another round, another tranche of 10,000 crores coming in. The fact that it did come is a very, very welcome move.
There were other timely announcements too, like a first of its kind deep tech fund, or the establishment of 5 centers of excellence for skilling, or a center of excellence for AI at a budgetary outlay of 500 crore rupees. But some feel there was scope for a lot more in terms of fiscal allocation on this front.
Now 500 crores is a dip in the pond, but you know, a good start nevertheless.
I was honestly expecting more on the AI front. That's the flavor of the season. But that being said, there's only so much the government can do. I think the private sector should pick up more in terms of capex.
So with more or less equal weightage given to funding, deep tech, AI and compliance, Budget 2025 is widely being regarded as good news for Indian startups.